And welcome back to this Friday edition of Political Radar. Some numbers to run by you tonight on the amount of money being spent in two of Indiana's hottest races. New campaign finance reports for the gubernatorial and 3rd District congressional races show the incumbent Republicans raising and spending more than their Democratic challengers. Governor Mitch Daniels has spent almost $13 million on the campaign, as opposed to Jill Long Thompson spending less than $4 million. And Congressman Mark Souder of the 3rd District has outspent Mike Montagano. Still has hundreds of thousands of dollars left in funds. The report has Montagano down to his last $30,000. And a recent story just broke today. The Supreme Court has unanimously overturned a lower court's decision to update Ohio's voter registration database. An estimated 200,000 Ohioans were in danger of being deprived of their vote November 4th. The news comes on Secretary of State Jennifer Bruner's deadline to set up a new system to provide local officials with names of newly registered voters whose information does not match up with other federal documents. Bruner says the nation's highest court has protected Ohio voters, and the appeal protects Ohioans from illegal challenges and barriers that unfairly silence voters. Local election board members say they are thrilled with this news. And Mike, this goes right to this organization, Acorn, that has been bringing new voters into the system, registering them, going door to door. What is Acorn, and what was this story all about? Well,
Acorn is a community organization group that has centered on both voter activation, typically on left issues, but also on trying to equalize things like housing. So actually in this election, because of the housing crisis and their role in that, and this voter registration, it's kind of collided to make them especially noteworthy this election. They've worked on this for 30 or 40 years. But this election, they've really kind of come to the fore because both of the big kind of components of this election they're both involved with that.
And they hire people to go out and register voters, and some of these people are apparently filling out false names like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck.
That's right. So it's
and handing them in.
It's voter registration fraud,
it's not voter
fraud.
Right.
And there's protections in the system. As we know, Allen County Election Board and throughout the state of Indiana, there's very cautious and good civil servants looking after it to make sure. And that's why these things come up, because they capture this. So there's less of voter fraud worries than this voter registration fraud.
Right. All right. Let's see what some of the folks out there have to say. We're going to take a call now from Anna. Hello, Anna. You're on the air.
Hello.
What's your question or comment tonight?
Okay. Are you there?
We're here. Go ahead.
I'm a widow, and I have a lot of friends that are widows and widowers, and I have not heard one thing about what either party would do for us.
For widows and widowers?
Yes.
Well, Mike, what about that?
We're on very fixed income.
What would you like to hear? What sorts of things would you like to hear, Anna? What are you listening for?
Financial help.
Okay. Well, there has, Michael, been a lot of talk of help for senior citizens, retirees.
Right. I mean, this is the big issue, is that a lot of people in Anna's position are the ones getting hit with high gas prices, are the ones that, the housing crisis, their values of their homes are probably decreasing. And so this is a considerable problem for many things, beyond just widow and widowers, but probably even more when there's not two incomes or at least two sources of Social Security or something like that. That's probably especially hitting people like Anna and other widows and widowers, but it's part of a more general problem. And that I think our government's working to do something about the housing crisis. The question is, both candidates are trying to deal with stimulating the economy as well, which, obviously this is hitting people like Anna.
And changes day to day,
apparently,
in the news. All right, well, we can take another call. Let's take a call from Rick. Hello, Rick, you're on the air.
Yes, I would just like to, wonder why the Democrats and Obama can't call what they're doing communism or socialism, or use the words and say, well, what we want to do is some communist principles. And
what are you referring to specifically? Give us an issue you're talking about.
The redistribution of wealth.
What do you mean?
Well, like with Joe Plummer.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Taking the rich people, or over 250,000, the people that build businesses, and taxing them more.
Okay.
Taxing big companies.
You think that's communism?
Yes, I do.
Okay, all right.
And then you tax big companies that send jobs overseas. Well, we're one of the most highest as far as taxing companies, and that's why they go overseas, is because of our high tax rate and the high labor and everything else.
Right.
I would just like to see some truth there, and if everybody says, well, maybe it's time for some communism, that's okay. And can I say one more thing?
Sure, quickly.
I would like to, take him up on his thing about gun control, with that guy saying everything about the sports guy saying how pro-gun Obama is, and it's just a lie. He's the most anti-gun senator that's ever been in the Senate, just about, and he's trying to act like he's pro-gun just because the Supreme Court said it was okay. I mean, nobody buys that, and if he's going to lie about that, what else is he going to lie about?
All right. Well, thanks very much for your call, Rick. Appreciate it very much. Going to take a real quick break. 483-8331. Give us a call. All right, we're back to this Friday edition of Political Radar. Let's get right to the phone lines. A lot of people have been waiting. Don's been on the line a long time. Don, hi. What's your question or comment tonight?
Well, I just have a question about all this attention to Joe. And, you know, in Ohio, this guy came out and asked a question of Senator Obama, and he's been subjected to a lot of criticism. And I've seen over in Illinois that you've got Bill Ayers, and he hasn't really been subjected to much scrutiny at all. So I wonder what gives on that whole front.
I wouldn't know. Mike, any ideas?
Well, I mean, I think the caller's right. I mean, Don is raising, this is a citizen who is concerned and who gave voice, and we want people having their role,
right.
and here this guy's getting cut up now a little bit. But at the same time, I think Ayers has certainly gotten a lot of viewpoint. I mean, front page of the New York Times. And,
wasn't he tried as well?
Yeah, I mean, so he's been in court, so the criminal justice system has had their cut at him. So I think Ayers has, you know, I don't think it's been all Joe the plumber.
The catalyst for this housing crisis.
All right, let's take another call. Jan's on the line. Hello, Jan. What's your question or comment tonight? Hello, Jan? Jan, are you there?
Yeah.
Hi. What's your question? Jan, are you there? Looks like we lost her. Let's go to David. David's on the line. He wants to talk about the debates. Is that right, David?
Yes, I'd like to talk about
Surely.
the debates.
Go right ahead.
I'd like the news media to pressure the candidates to have a real debate where the questions would come from the general public rather than a news correspondent.
That's a good point. You know, we call them debates, but they aren't really debates by format, are they?
No, the Commission on Presidential Debates set the format. I mean, it used to, prior to 1988, it used to be much more open, and the League of Women Voters would set this. And so they are pretty scripted, I think, and people are frustrated by it. And I think, you know, what David's talking about, some of the issues like executive power or something like that, that is really a big key for a president in a presidential election, weren't raised. So I think there is some of the kind of component of the questioning how these debates are really hitting on some of the aspects of the job of president.
I think Bob Schieffer got the closest to really honing in on them until they actually answered a question.
Right.
Let me talk to you a little bit about the race. There are sort of two theories floating around that this presidential election is either going to be a very close race, it'll tighten up, or it's going to be a landslide for Democrats. If it's a landslide for Democrats, does that mean a major political realignment in this country where the Republicans are sort of banished to the political hinterlands for a decade or something like that? Is that a possibility?
There is a real possibility of, especially if the Democrats gain 60 seats in the Senate, that they will, because after 60 seats, they will not be able to be filibustered. And as a consequence, the legislation, which is often slowed down by the Senate, will be able to fly through, and it'll be pro-democratic. So getting to 60 is the key, and we, at that point, will see a lot of legislation moving through that's left-leaning, at least pro-Obama positions. So it could significantly change the policy framework.
But how does that change? How does that change the political landscape in terms of the Republican Party? Why would that keep them out of power?
Yeah, well then
really
you
quickly,
have
we're out of time.
Significant incumbents. It's very difficult to being an incumbent in the congressional level.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
All right. Well, that wraps up this Friday edition of Political Radar. We're back Monday night at 7:30 for another look